Welcome everyone. Today we'll have an updated build guide for our Marksman for last Epoch. Now looking behind me, for those of you that haven't seen the Marksman before, here is a recap of the demonstration of the Marksman with close to 1300 corruption. Now my friend has been testing with 1300, 1400 corruption, close to 1500 corruptions. And during the testings, there's a lot of feedback from the Chinese community as well as regards to what is going to be the best stats for his build and also what is going to be the best thing that you can adjust for. So we have fine-tuned some of the mistakes or the misunderstandings to some of the scaling and also adjusted the build for even more damage. So in the first part of the video, of course, I'll still demonstrate you guys the build as he cruised through his way with 1300 corruption. And you can see the build is still very speedy, the build is very powerful, and the build is great. I'll be providing you with some additional information and lots of, frequently asked questions and also update with the build on the first part, and we also have lots of notes on the second part. Now, because you guys have seen the instant kill with Jura, and also you might have seen the previous kills with the Shade Boss with, 1200, 1300 corruptions, yes, the build is still amazing in higher level dungeons. What we're trying to do is, we're trying to make ourselves deal even more damage and also retaining more durability for the build. Now for the high corruption replay, I'll have this entire replay available for you guys because some of the viewers were saying that I wasn't showing that in all of the videos. And just in case you haven't seen our previous videos, this replay will be available to demonstrate the build, and the build has been updated for even more utility, even more damage, and also survivability. Now if you come over to the notes, you can see that I have updated on the second section to the Marksman build. So the Marksman build is put on top now. I have been updating on the second section of the Marksman build, and there are a number of frequently asked questions, including how do you get the daggers, what about the higher, legendary potential daggers, what about the mana issue, the warding issue, and also what to do with over 1000 plus corruption. So there is a number of tips and also frequently asked questions that I want to have a collective guide, and this will be on the second part. Now coming over to our first part of the video, you might have noticed the build I'm providing you guys with the latest update is a little different to the previous build, and there are some number of changes. So if we come over to my friend's video, which he introduced this particular setup with this combination, notice that I know you can't speak Chinese, I'm trying to translate. He have been updating for some better stats and also effects, and also there are some skills which the Chinese community has confirmed and also our community has confirmed that some of the skills might not be proccing and also dealing damage as we expected. So let me explain the first part with the adjustment of the build and what has changed. For the updated build, the melee critical multipliers are close to 500. Close to previously, it's about 360. So there is a dramatic increase in terms of critical multipliers, and I'll explain why. You can see that the increase of lightning damage is also pretty high. We have reduced the lightning damage flat. So here you can see the previous build, there's only about 360 of the critical multipliers. There is a lot of flat damage with lightning and also less lightning percentage damage. So the Chinese community has been stressing out that the critical multipliers seems to be the best source of damage in the latest stage of the game. Compared to what my friends was hoping and also what he was using flat melee lightning damage. But as the community stressed out, having higher critical chance on your helmet and also having more critical chance of increased damage with your daggers, you can deal even more damage by stacking critical multipliers, which seems to be the best multiplier for the endgame if you're running a critical build, and our build has a lot of critical chance. So following from this concept, we have decided to switch the endgame setup from the tier 7 melee damage into critical strike multipliers. And if you guys are following the previous build, it's okay, it's not the worst. So here notice I'm still doing with the melee lightning damage, and yes, I was happy to get a tier 7 roll on this one. And this one, I didn't get anything, I was really unlucky. I ran my luck really badly, I missed the tier 7, missed the tier 5 on this one, so don't go for gold. So the first thing is, yes, there's a swap up between the multipliers, and critical strike multiplier can be ideal for even more damage if you have enough critical chance. And that is coming from the helmet, coming from the daggers, and that is coming from the effects of tier 5. Having more daggers gives you more critical chance. The second thing is, the Chinese community has also stressed out that melee lightning damage itself is actually similar damage bonus compared to increased melee damage percentage. So notice in the previous build, we really focused on melee lightning damage, but we didn't get that much melee lightning damage percentage. So after some testing, people are saying this can be similar in terms of damage. So if you're going for daggers, any of those setup can work. You don't have to go for armor shredding, you don't have to go for shock. So ideally, you just need critical strike multipliers, then it can be increased lightning damage percentage, or this can be increased flat lightning damage. You can then try to find chance to shred armor on the amulet or on the gloves as well. And we have plenty of shock, so the shocking is not the biggest deal. And as long as you have one source of armor shredding, that is okay. It doesn't have to be crafted on the weapon. So you might be wondering why I'm saying this. Is because on the second part, when we look at it, is actually quite hard to get over 2 legendary potential for the daggers. So we're trying to reduce the required for the daggers of legendary potential, try to get it down to 2 or 3, so it's not too stressful for you guys to complete the endgame build. Now, other than this major change with the tier 7 critical multipliers, I have also decided to go into the critical multipliers from the blessings over here. In return, I am sacrificing some void resistance, which can be found if you can find those on your items. So if you cannot find all 75% resistance, you should not be sacrificing resistance from the blessings. But you can also go with all blessings, which gives you a slightly higher blessing compared to previously what we had. So previously we had void resistance, necrotic resistance. But if you go for all resistance and then try to balance the rest of the resistance, this can work as well to give you even more damage with the critical multipliers. Now for the case that you guys are like me, during the transition phase, you don't have all the resistance, remember to unlock your, I haven't unlocked my idols because I was making so many guides. Remember that you can swap your idols up so you can balance resistance. Stacking cold resistance will help to give you more warding retention because of the uniqueness of the gloves. But you can still find resistance on your gears and especially on your idols to get the 75 resistance for all of them. Now if we come over to the skills and also passive, there are also some updates. So firstly over here, if we come over to Smoke Bomb and also Swift. Firstly with Swift, the Chinese community and also my friend have tested that they realized the shadows that created from Swift will auto cast the spells you are casting, but it will not trigger the additional effect to summon more detonating arrows, which will be a little bad for the concept of the build dealing tremendous damage. Otherwise the build is like 3 times more damage. So notice that we used to have 4 points into the shadows, now it's only 1 point. So points has been allocated over here to give you additional resource from health and also mana by consuming shadows. Also 1 point is allocated over here for the late stage of the game to give you more damage reduction, damage over time reduction while having the buffs up. We're not really trying to bleed, we're here to get damage reduction by killing enemies inside of the shard. Now we've still kept the points over here because leaving a shadow is not bad. If you're not planning to use shadows, you can come here for this point over here, so you have a 4% kill threshold, which is not the biggest deal. So having more shadows over here and be able to consume shadows for more mana can be very helpful. Now over here, my friend also suggested that if you guys want to try, you can use the unskilled synchronized strike. There's some interesting mechanics to it. I'm not saying this is the best one. So notice here, if I use synchronized strike, I create 2 shadows. And if I dash, I have 3 shadows. If I cast spells, all of them will cast spells with me. But unfortunately, the spells they cast did not trigger the detonating arrows. So the concept is not the best. I'll still have a small replay to show you guys. If you want to use this one, you can still try to use it. So here's a small demonstration of how possibly you can use the synchronized strike. So before you fight the boss, you can create 2 additional shadows. It's a little gimmicking, I don't think you really want to use it, but this is just a recommendation suggested by the community. I thought I'd share with you guys. So yes, because we have additional skills on the skill bars, you can use synchronized strike to summon 2 more shadows to just get the setup going, but it's not really the biggest deal. And you can see during the rest of my testing rounds, I kept the skill on my skill tree, but as I fight through the dungeons, I didn't really use the skill. But it's 2 more shadows, you can consume shadows for more mana, maybe it can help, so you guys can try this out as well. There is also one more adjustment. I did notice that some of the community was saying that the Veil of the Night was not triggering. Well, one way to trigger the Veil of the Night is actually to use Synchronized Strike, and this can work. But after discussing with my friend, he said that it's probably not that worth it to use Synchronized Strike for 14 mana just to trigger the Veil of the Night. So 5 points are allocated over here to give you additional buff of the flow, which will give you additional throwing attack speed. Again, it's not going to be the biggest changes of the game, but those 5 points can be allocated elsewhere if you also want to, and this leaves up a lot of room for adjusting the build. So if you look at the previous build, 5 points were allocated over here, and the current update build, 5 points are allocated on this side. And that should pretty much summarize the update of the build. And I know it's not the biggest change, and the weapon crafting, if you already got a tier 7, it's okay guys. If you're looking for critical multipliers, if you have those, this can also be great. So what I do now is, let's come over to the second part with frequently asked questions for the Marksman. Now I know a lot of our viewers have been asking me the question, how do I get those daggers? How do I get those daggers to 2 legendary potential? Well, it's actually an answer that comes together, and I really want to make this video. Firstly guys, if you're in the merchant guild, those daggers normally sell from 0 gold to 99 gold without legendary potential. I know they're really cheap, so you can get the build started. If you're in the Circle of Fortune, or if you want to farm those daggers, the Ring of Dragons is the best timeline to be farming those. Now because the daggers actually can be found with Ruins of Ascendance and they are common drops, which I can show you guys over here using the simulator, you can see the dagger is actually close to 15% rate. I had 17%, I should adjust that. So yes, the dagger has a really common rate close to 15 to 17% rate if you use the Ruins of Ascendance for the daggers. And this will allow you to get the build started. I'm not saying this will give you the highest legendary potential with Ruins of Ascendance, but this will find you the daggers after level 36 to use it for the build. Now the second question is, how do I get higher LP daggers? Well, a little unfortunate, we didn't expect this to be such a huge inflation spike. Before the release of those videos on the Chinese platform and on the YouTube platform, those daggers were selling for about 20,000 gold, and I didn't buy them as well. It was very silly of me. And then those daggers went to over 500,000 gold for 2 legendary potential. I still recommend players to be farming for those daggers as they are quite common, and you can see that there's not many daggers in the section, so that means you can be farming those one quite quickly. Now if you're in the merchant guild, you can even sell them for tons of gold. If you're in the Circle of Fortune, following our method of farming for tons of loot using the prophecy can give you some really good daggers. If you're rank 10 with Circle of Fortune, this can really help to instantly get 2 really good daggers as you farm using prophecies. So I have the guide available over here for you guys to have a look how to be farming for those daggers. Now one of the questions or one of the things I should be correcting is, in my own play, in my own account, you can see that I'm not stacking enough cold resistance simply because I don't have my blessings unlocked and I do not have enough of my idols unlocked because I was power leveled on this account and I never spent the time to unlock those side quests. So this is why my warding is only 2,200. So expected you can be sitting on 3,000, 4,000 warding as you stack uncapped cold resistance. And this, together with maximum life, is the goal for the endgame build. By having more defensive capacities will give you more warding for this question. Now I often have questions about why am I running out of mana. The first thing you want to realize guys, we're auto-casting Detonating Arrow. And by auto-casting this spell, there is actually a price to be paid, which we kind of skipped. The price paid over here is when you're auto-casting this spell, you actually have 125% increased mana consumption. But our bypass trick is we got the spell cost to 0, and by having the spell cost to 0, no matter how much multipliers of the increased mana cost you have, this will not consume mana. So this is when the 2 daggers with a total of -8 mana comes from, because it starts with 8 mana cost. So this is the biggest highlight guys, if you run out of mana, check that if your daggers add up to -8 mana. This is a very big deal. Second to that, follow our latest build guide to adjust for the infinite mana build, because if you become mana efficient, you can be having tons of mana to kill bosses, to travel through the map, and using a method of unperking passive points will give you more mana reduction. So make sure you follow this video on this particular section. As a general summary guys, minus throwing cost mana and also mana regeneration will help a lot. So here you can see my current build, I have minus throw mana cost, and here I'll be crafting those rings for additional mana regeneration. Now coming over to the topic of the endgame, if you're pushing for over 1000 corruption, well, you're doing a really good job. The first thing is you want to keep moving because you know our passive over here, we have damage reduction as we move. And this is actually pretty important. This is a 20% damage reduction and also a dodge increase. And because we're so mobile, we really want to move around. Now similarly, we should be dashing around and also using our smoke bombs. Both give us additional mana and also remove the debuff from the boots. Those boots will chill you every 3 seconds. You can see the chill and notice my movement speed is quite low. But if I cast my smoke bomb, I get removed of the debuff, and which gives me a burst opportunity to deal more damage to become more mobile. Now in the later stage of the game, you can notice that monsters will actively lower your resistance. So this is why if you can push your resistance over 75%, when you have a minus 20 resistance, you will still be capped at 75%. This is quite important to know to not get one-shotted in the later stage of the game. And also building critical avoidance is a good idea as well. Now it is possible to find critical avoidance blessings over here up to 70%. And now of course our build was transitioning into more resistance. So it is a personal choice, guys. If you find yourself getting one-shotted from critical strike, you can come over here to build for critical strike avoidance. You can then sacrifice some resistance which can be found elsewhere. Now one of the reminders my friend gave to me is that I should be using my unique amulet together with potions to recover warding. So for this particular amulet, you're getting additional health gained converted into ward as you use your potion. And if you're using the experimental belt, which gives you more mana as you use potions, this can be great to pop potions against the boss. So if you're going to burst down the boss, popping potions will give you more warding and also more mana regen. And this is how most of the time you can easily burst the boss down before they even deal damage to you. Now finally, with over 1500 corruption, you'll be expecting to take a lot of damage over time. And for our build, it is quite hard to mitigate that. So one of the ways we were hoping is that having this particular passive one with the 3 points, you can have damage reduction to damage over time. It's not going to be the biggest factor, and maximum you can get 15%, but it's still something if you find yourself dying to damage over time over here. Now for over 1000 corruption, you can notice our build is not going to be the tankiest build. But if you make use of increased movement speed, you can dodge most of the spells. And it's quite important, guys, to be dodging for AoEs and all of the boss one-shotting spells for the late stage of the game. Now before we finish, I also have a quick tip in terms of the FPS lag. Sometimes I get this, so hopefully this gets optimized. Currently I'm sitting on the lowest setting for me for the game, just so that I don't get FPS lags, so notice that my settings are the lowest. The second thing I was suggested by a friend is that try to turn on, turn half, and also turn off the vertical sync. So currently I'm having this one off and it seems to be working for me. But other players have reported turning this on can also help with the lags and also the delays of the FPS. So those could be some ways to fix it. Now during co-op, it might recover from super laggy into not very laggy with FPS after one echo. And if this doesn't work, you can relog into the party and this should help you to fix the lag coming from the co-op. Now hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Oh boy, it's a really long video again. And we'll be trying to update the build, optimize the build. And if you guys do have any suggestions, tips, or discovery for the build, let us know in the comments below or send me a direct message onto Discord. Simply by joining our Action RPG Discord and then sending me a direct message can get through to me and we can be learning from you as well. Now if you guys haven't subscribed, this is a really good time to do so because I'll be learning with tons of the top meta, last Epoch build from different players in terms of solo and also in terms of co-op to push for higher corruptions, 800, 2000 here, and also different ways of getting top leaderboard with arena with leveling. And in doing so, we'll be learning multiple builds from the best players in the world. So make sure you subscribe and join me on this adventure to learn with Last Epoch. And if you guys do have an amazing build, whether it's a fun build, it's a creative build, or maybe a top meta build, you can share with me on Discord and I'll look into it, learn the build, and share with everyone on the Last Epoch community.